Welcome back to this week's edition of the Warwick F1 show. This week is my turn in the hosting chair, Chinmay, and I'm really looking forward to this episode because I thought we'd just throw us in the deep end and react to some of the F1 Society's controversial opinions. So basically what we did, we just launched an Instagram story and asked the entire Formula 1 Society here at Warwick University, basically just asking for what controversial opinions do people in society have, basically. And what we'll do, I've got a whole list compiled here, and we'll react to them and basically give them a grade from A to F, really. And so obviously I can't do this alone, so of course I'm joined by the ever-trusted co-host Will Kingswood. How are you?
Yep, this is not going to be controversial in the slightest. What we say and what we do right now will decide how people think of us and whether they think we're actually competent or not.
Yeah, and also we do have a returning guest with Will Biddles. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm looking forward to see how many people we can annoy today. It'll be interesting to see
the aim is everyone. Let's annoy everyone equally.
Yeah, I think that's probably the plan, to be honest. So I think to start off with, just to keep the things going, I'm going to just get this out the way. I think I'm going to ask both Wills, what are your controversial opinions first? I think I'll start with...
Right, I'm going to go back in the day a bit, and I'm going to say that in 2012, Lewis Hamilton should have been in the title decider at Brazil and very easily could have won that title. Based on the amount of bad luck he got in that season. People say Hamilton was lucky from 2017 to 2021 with reliability and things like that. And that's because it all got paid for in 2012. Right, I'm going to run through everything that went wrong that season. I'm even going to remove the gearbox penalties and things like that because that happens to everyone. So in Bahrain, 2 slow pit stops, falls from 3rd to 8th. Spain qualifies on pole but demoted to the back of the grid because he runs out of fuel. Monaco running 3rd and then loses positions due to a slow pit stop, drops to 5th. Europe in Valencia gets taken out by Pastor Maldonado, so no change there. Singapore winning and then his gearbox fails. Obviously I haven't even mentioned Belgium where he gets taken out by the other menace of the 2012 grid Romain Grosjean. In Korea, rear anti-roll bar failure, havoc with tyre wear, drops from 4th to 10th. In Abu Dhabi, he's winning again and retires due to engine failure. And then in Brazil, obviously, he's winning that race and he gets taken out by Nico Hülkenberg and obviously retires from that. So all of those retirements, he eventually ends up finishing, I think, about 100 points behind in the title battle. Let me just see if I can find it here. But obviously Alonso and Vettel had their own issues. Alonso getting taken out in Suzuka and Spa. Obviously the Spa incident along with Hamilton. Vettel having reliability issues in Italy and Valencia as well. But with everything going right or less going wrong for Hamilton, he very easily could have been in that title battle in Brazil and could have made it an even better title battle than what we originally got. What are our thoughts?
I actually see where you're coming from, but I think really, to be honest, I have a lot of Vettel biasness here. And obviously, Red Bull was the one who ended up being champions, but I think there was a chance that he could have, but I honestly don't think that he would have won the championship at the end.
So he finished 91 points behind Vettel in the end.
Yeah. There's still quite a lot of gap. I don't think he would have won that championship in the season, but I think he could have been a contender because McLaren was quick that season as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one because you've also got to say, okay, they've made the engine that way. That's like saying in the same season, Kimi Räikkönen had one of the best like traction-related cars possibly ever with that Lotus that would just stick to corners, but it had no straight line speed. That's like saying if he had the red Mercedes or Ferrari engine that year, he could have won it. It's a possibility that he could have won it, but I think it's a lot of points, and you could probably make the argument for everyone else as well.
Yeah. I mean, from his 5 retirements, 3 of them, even if we go off drivers, my only argument is even if we go off drivers retire originally, it does depend on where they retire. If you get an engine failure in 4th, it's a bit different from an engine failure in 1st. And of his 5 retirements, 3 of them were from the leader of the race, and then obviously in Belgium he got crashed into, and I don't know what happened. He retired in Germany for some reason. I don't know why. But no, I think it was he probably wouldn't have won it, but I think he should have been a lot closer than he originally was, and he finished 4th in the championship. I think a 3rd place would have been fair, and probably a 3rd place quite close to the top 2.
Yeah, I think I can get that. I mean, what would you give that as a grading for the reaction then, as an opinion?
Like probably a C. I mean, it's slightly kind of if, buts and maybes, but obviously I think a lot of people know he was very quick that year. He was probably driving better than when he won any of his world championships potentially.
Yeah.
I've just found out why he retired in Germany as well. He got a puncture on the 3rd lap. So I don't know if that was a puncture from just debris or a collision, but again, that is quite unlucky as well. So I think that was where Hamilton's bad luck came in, and then he got a bit more in 2016, and then he paid for all of that in 2017 to 2020.
Yeah, probably. I mean, yeah, I'll probably give it a C, maybe borderline CD, mainly because I don't think it's not really a controversial opinion, but I think it's a very big maybe that he would have had a chance at the season. Yeah. So I think, well, what is your controversial opinion?
My controversial opinion is that George Russell will not be a top 10 driver next year. He may finish in the top 10 in the standings, but he won't drive like one of the top 10 drivers.
Bear in mind, he is going through a rough patch right now. I can see it that he cannot.
Right, this George Russell hate, I understand it, but it does show for me how fickle F1 fans can be. Because at the start of the season, when he was getting all the top 5 finishes, he was like the greatest driver of all time. Like on that grid, he was the best performing driver by far. And now he's had obviously collisions with Perez, with Sainz, with Hulkenberg, with Schumacher in Singapore.
Could be Hulkenberg next year.
But I think that he had such a track record at the start of the season. Every driver has gone through a rough patch in their career. Like, we've seen Carlos Sainz have a rough patch a bit earlier in the season. Verstappen, obviously, 2018, the start of that season, where he seemingly was magnetically attracted to other people's cars. Even Lewis Hamilton's probably went through a bit of a rough patch at the start of this season as well. I think he's got the track record, and I don't think lower 50% of the entire grid, I think, is possibly a bit harsh. I could see him being 5 to 10, but I wouldn't say under 10.
Yeah, I mean, George Russell, I mean, yeah, I think he's had a bit of a downward spiral this season. Like, he's gone from one of the top highest rated drivers of the grid to one of the most hated at the moment. It kind of does show just how quickly opinions can change. But I think, to be honest, that's with every sport. I mean, I'll give you a prime example in cricket. Virat Kohli, he's just literally come back into form. And before that, he had a good 3 years. I'll go back before 2019. Everybody loved him. And, well, I mainly talk about the Indian fans. And then come after 2020, 21, and even the first half of this year, because he hasn't performed, everyone's been hating Kohli, wanting him to be dropped. But then obviously, ever since he scored that century against Afghanistan, I think, in the Asia Cup, and he's pretty much been, I think, after India's second best batsman in the lineup, especially this World Cup, I think everyone's loving him again. So I think it's a thing with every sport that opinions just change all the time, but I think, yeah.
Would you agree?
I get that obviously everyone's opinions have changed over time, but personally at the start of the season I don't think he did an amazing job. Like, listening to what even like his own teammate was saying, that actually he didn't decide any of the setup. Like, the team just said, okay, here's your setup, that is the best you can get.
Yeah.
He's not tinkered with it at all. He's not been able to crash because he's basically been kind of in like a middle ground with no one around him.
The Mercedes has been a very lonely third this season.
Yeah. Well, you think back to the only time he had an issue was in Imola, for example, when Hamilton was stuck behind Tsunoda, I think.
I think it was Gasly.
It
Yeah.
was Gasly.
The AlphaTauri haunts my dreams.
Yeah. He had a battle with Magnussen, and he got past him and then messed it up straight away again. Like, when he's been put in wheel-to-wheel combat, he's not... The only time I can think he's done something well in wheel-to-wheel combat was in Spain against Verstappen, when he still ended up losing the position. Like, he held him off for like a lap, but that was about it.
Yeah. No, I can definitely see where you're coming from, and to be honest, I'm actually kind of seeing George Russell's rough patch actually continuing quite a lot into next year. So I think, but definitely, it's going to anger a lot of Mercedes fans, that. So I will give it a solid B as a grade for that.
Wait, so what, hang on, how do these grades work?
Basically, okay, I probably forgot to explain. The gradings will work on the level of how controversial they are and how good of an opinion it is. Like,
good combined with controversial. I think, yeah, B.
I'll give it a good B for this one.
I could see it happening, but I don't personally think it will. But it is quite controversial, so I think a B is probably fair.
Yeah. I've got two controversial opinions I want to put down, because actually the first one leads off Will's about George Russell. This is quite big, but I have a feeling that George Russell has a decent chance of getting a reputation similar to Romain Grosjean after he retires from Formula One. Because you look at how I'm just giving some slight comparisons. I'm not going to go over Grosjean's junior career, but in a nutshell, Grosjean had a stellar junior career, which basically led him to enter into F1. But then obviously he comes into F1. He has elements of really good pace. Because I think throughout 2013, if the Lotus was fast enough, he would have easily got wins, because he got quite a few podiums that season, I believe. But then obviously he's ended up with his reputation of crashing a lot and hasn't really performed to what he has done. And I feel that George Russell might be one of those drivers that ends up with that sort of position as well. But what do you think?
It's an interesting one. I think it'd be very difficult for him to end up like that at a team like Mercedes. I feel like they wouldn't let it go on long enough for it to get to that stage. I also think the issues that Romain Grosjean had were quite extravagant. Yeah. He caused a lot of dangerous crashes.
I mean, some of them may have been caused by Ericsson in Baku, but...
Yeah. But I mean... I don't see it lasting long enough. I don't think he'll be at Mercedes long enough for the reputation to be damaged that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Grosjean's a bit different, because obviously he was never in like a top team. I mean, the Lotus at the back end of 2013 and 2012 was arguably the second best car, but again, Sebastian Vettel just went on a mad one and won 9 races in a row. I don't even know if Grosjean was not that bad, because obviously he did have the 2012, which is a horror show in terms of crashing and things like that. But other than that, he wasn't the most he wasn't the worst driver on the grid. He wasn't the best driver on the grid by any means, but I think he did calm down a bit as he got a bit older. I think that 2012 season really tarnishes, obviously, and obviously him, and paints a reputation that maybe later on in his career he didn't really deserve. But I could see George Russell, potentially being like that. But as Will said, I don't think that in a top team like Mercedes, which we would think are going to bounce back from this season, they're going to be back up with Ferrari and Red Bull in the next few years, that if he is crashing every other race, then Mercedes is going to have to sit him down and tell him not to, or he won't have a drive in the future.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, I see what you mean. Mercedes, because I think Mercedes would not have a lot of patience compared to Haas, because Haas had a lot of patience with Grosjean. But yeah,
I mean, I think as well, like, one of the things that everyone loves about George Russell is that he is so consistent, and that's one thing you could never really say about Grosjean.
Yeah,
it's like he would have like an amazing weekend, finish second, comfortably ahead of his teammate when he was at Lotus, or have like an amazing weekend with Haas, and then be 19th the week after. Whereas George Russell, he may have the odd accident, but he will be kind of just a bang average driver every week.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, what do you think of? Give that as a rating then?
I think a C, solid C. I don't think it's the most controversial opinion, but I think it's one that's more likely to possibly occur.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a C as well. I think there is a possibility, but it's obviously not too controversial with the fact it could happen quite easily.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, that's a controversial opinion from all three of us. So we'll take a quick break now, and what we'll do, we'll get started with just looking at what the society has put in as your controversial opinions, and we'll go through them. We have quite a few to go through, so. Right, so let's start going through all of your controversial opinions, the bit that we've all been waiting for. So, we've got quite a few to go through, and about anything and everything to do with F1. We haven't said to any specific themes or anything, just F1. So, I'm going to start the first one. Stroll deserves to be in his seat through skill alone. So...
Well, I mean, I feel like this sums up about Lance Stroll, basically, because the fourth one down then says Stroll is massively overrated. And I mean, one of the ones I was going to do, and I could probably do it now, is that, in my opinion, in the wet, Stroll is the third best driver on the grid. And I think that Lance Stroll, on his day, is a very good driver. It's just his day he's not on his day enough, and he makes too many like blunders, errors, and things like that. Like, obviously, we saw it in Australia with the collision with Albon. We saw it in the US with the collision with Alonso. I think he does deserve to be there. Do I think he would necessarily still be on the grid if his father didn't own an F1 team? Probably not.
No.
But I think the flashes of brilliance that he's shown, I mean, getting that pole position in Turkey last year, if they'd gone on the correct strategy, potentially even winning the race, I think that Stroll definitely could be, on his day, is my point. On his day, Stroll is a very good driver. It's just, if he wants to be a better driver, he needs to be on his day more. He needs to be doing those quali performances in Italy 2018, in Turkey 2020, those race performances in Baku 2017 that we saw. He just needs to be doing that more, and if he was doing that, the questions would go away about whether he deserves to be there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think, like you said, he's an amazing driver in the wet, but the FIA don't let us race in the wet anymore. So at the moment, he's not having any chances to showcase his skill, I guess.
Yeah.
I think with it, everything as it is, and you look at all the like good young drivers coming through F2 and like different driver academies and stuff, it would be very hard to try and justify him staying in a seat.
Yeah, no, I think I'm agreeing with both of you. I mean, yeah, like Will said, when he has his day, he can be a quick driver, and his raw speed is good. And when you take in his raw speed, when he's there, that is definitely F1 worthy. But it just doesn't come often enough. It probably comes like once or twice a year max. But yeah, I just don't think in reality he really does deserve to stay in F1 for much longer. I feel like Aston Martin, if it wasn't for his dad, should invest in just a better driver to have alongside, especially when you got a legend. I mean, we have kind of Vettel now, and the next year they're going to have Alonso. I feel like they should. Yeah. They should consider options soon, hopefully.
I mean, in 2020, I think he got very unlucky in 2020. That was probably his best season with when he retired and sort of how he did it, because he came 11th in the season, but he withdrew from the Eiffel Grand Prix due to COVID, retired obviously in Tuscany due to that tyre blowout when he was running quite high in the points. Yeah. And then, I mean, he went on a run of 5 pointless races and 3 retirements.
Yeah, because I think I remember that year as well. I think it was the Bahrain Grand Prix. Was it the Bahrain Grand Prix? It was the same year as the same race as the Grosjean crash where
he got flipped by Kvyat.
Kvyat was just...
Yeah, Kvyat was not having
he was a proper tornado that race. But, you know...
Yeah, I think Stroll does deserve... would I say he would... If he didn't have his dad, would he be on the grid? I'd say possibly yes, but would he have been off the... If he had his dad, no longer had his dad for whatever reason, like in a magical fantasy world, by now, I think he'd be off the grid in the next few years when his future looks quite secure, obviously, right now.
Yeah. So, yeah, what would you rate that opinion then about... We'll rate the Stroll deserves to be in the seat through skill. We'll rate that one. What do you think we should give that one as a controversial opinion rating?
I'm going to go with like a D, I think. I don't think it's that controversial. I think everyone's quite split on Lance Stroll, and I think there are a lot of people that actually think he probably does have the race pace. And he has shown it, like, he deserves to be here. Whether he deserves to have been here as long as he has been is a completely different argument, but I think he definitely deserves to be in F1 based on his skill.
Yeah, I think it's C. I think Stroll's got the pace, he just needs the consistency. Consistency is key. And consistency makes it that if you're performing consistently well, you are getting much more credit than if you do flashes of brilliance but then retire at the next 3 races.
Yeah, I think I'll stick to the same rating as both of you. Give it around a D. I think some people do have that feeling that he should deserve a C, and he does have elements that shows that he deserves it, but also you got the elements that shows he doesn't. So I think that's a good one. The second opinion I'm going to go through is, if Norris was in Red Bull, he would challenge Max more than Sergio Perez.
Yeah, but would they... I mean, we're having to do a fantasy world where Norris would be in the Red Bull, because I don't think that Red Bull... I think Red Bull have landed on an absolute gold mine in just employing Max Verstappen and employing a driver that's very obviously... Maybe not so, but if you just develop the car around Max Verstappen, if you give him that perfect car, then he is going to be exactly what they need. He will win them the world title. So would they? I don't necessarily think they would employ Norris, but if they did, I do think he'd be challenging Verstappen a lot more to, I guess, the possible detriment of Red Bull as a whole. Maybe. Obviously, they have those good performances because Verstappen is it's such a one team or a one driver team. But no, I think Norris would be challenging Sergio Perez.
Yeah. So what do we think as a rating for that then? I think probably give that a D or an even E, because it's not actually controversial at all. No. Because I think, I mean, in an ideal world, Norris would challenge more than Perez, because I think Norris has better raw pace. But then, obviously, the real chances of Norris actually going to Red Bull is very slim, especially because they'll have to pay a pretty hefty salary to both drivers, because Verstappen, I think, is the second highest paid, and Norris is currently being paid at 15 million something a year with McLaren to 2025. So
why couldn't I have been an F1 driver? I'd have so much money.
But I mean, would you agree with that? Maybe.
Yeah, no, I think it's not especially controversial. They have failed in the assignment of thinking of a controversial opinion.
Yeah. And so, before we move on to the next one, we do have another guest. So, welcome back, Yusuf. How are you doing?
Yeah, good to be here.
Nice. So, Yeah, so, yeah, I'll start with your reaction first this time. So, the next one is, we're going to get a bit polarizing now. Max Verstappen has the personality of soggy toast. Do you think he really has a bad personality?
I think it's a little bit harsh. I think we also probably don't know his personality very much. And I think, given he's been bred by his father to be a racing driver since the age of 4, that doesn't leave that much time for developing that much personality. So I'd say it's a little bit harsh.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think of... Actually, I'm going to ask the Mercedes fan here.
He's just grumpy all the time. I don't think he's got a bad personality. I think that... I think, as you said, Jos Verstappen has had quite a big role on his personal development to possibly a detrimental effect.
Yeah, not to mention his girlfriend's dad, Nelson Piquet.
Oh God! I think that you find out a driver's sort of true persona when the chips are sort of down, when he's going through a bad run of form, and I think you see some drivers are still quite personable, quite nice. I think when Verstappen gets in a bad run of form, then he gets a bit unpleasant.
Yeah, he does.
Soggy toast would imply he's boring. I don't think he's boring, but I wouldn't say he's the most, nice person on the grid. And obviously, nice people can win titles. That doesn't mean, being nice doesn't mean you're definitely going to win a title. Latifi seems like a lovely person.
Yeah.
He's still 20th in the season. But I don't personally, obviously Verstappen's not my favourite driver, and I think the driving style has a role, and I do think the personality has a role, but I guess not necessarily his style. Everyone's changed by how they're brought up, and everything we hear about Jos Verstappen's parenting style doesn't fill me with great hope.
Yeah, I think especially with stories like the fact that I think Max was left in a petrol station or something like that. I mean, what do you think?
I don't agree with it at all. I think, like you said, soggy toast would imply that he's boring. I think if you think back to when he was Daniel Ricciardo's teammate, he was they were just joking around constantly, and all the younger generation seem to like him, all support him. They're all quite close. A lot of the time we see Verstappen is probably managed by his PR team, bar on car radios. So I think it's hard to kind of take away from that, and obviously when there's a lot of pressure on you to perform, not just from your team, yourself, but also your psychotic father, you've probably got a lot of emotion stored up when you're in that car. So I think I can understand why it comes out quite badly at times.
Yeah, but I think the key here is that yes, he shouts on the radio, but I think outside, I think he does actually go and apologise to his team and whatnot. Because I think I heard the story once on a radio show where there's an ex-Red Bull engineer because Verstappen apparently doesn't seem to be the biggest fan of PR, which is completely understandable. And apparently he would just go into the engineers' room just to hide there, and he'll go and have a nice chat with the engineers. So, which is a nice little element as well. So, Yeah,
we've got to take everything with a pinch of salt, because it's what we see. He might just not be... he might just not like PR. I can't imagine that if I was having to do interviews 24/7 and the constant scrutiny, it would take a toll on a person. I imagine that he's probably a very nice person, maybe away from the camera, and maybe I'm just judging him too harshly, but I have to go off. I'm not criticising him.
No, you're not.
Mainly, I'm criticising Jos Verstappen for being a psycho and a very highly unpleasant person. That's not a controversial opinion. That is a fact.
Yes. So, what do you think of this opinion about personality? Would you rate that high or not really?
I think it's quite controversial, and I'd probably give it a B, because I don't necessarily think it's true.
So,
I think I'd probably give it an A. I think unless you absolutely hate Verstappen, I don't think anyone's really of the opinion of this.
Yeah, do you have really a grade or a rating for that?
No, not really. I think it's controversial, but not really that true, like we've been saying.
Yeah. So I think we'll give that a B. I think I'll average it out, B then. So we'll go on to the next bit just to change it up. We'll go to another driver. Alonso is still one of the top 3 drivers on the grid, which I think is not not right at all. I don't think so. He's one top 3 on the grid. Because realistically, you got Verstappen, you got Norris, in my opinion, and then maybe... Actually, who would be the third one?
For me, the top 3 drivers on the grid are comfortably Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc. And then you can sort of start talking about the Landos and Georges and Alonso's of this world. I think Alonso's peaks are still right up there, and I think his consistency is still right up there, but ultimately we're probably never going to see him in a front-running car again. So I think he's a little bit of outside the equation of when we talk about the top 3 drivers on the grid, but that's not any criticism of his driving, because I still think he's right up there.
Yeah, I just don't think you can even consider that. I think for half the season he's been on par with his own teammate, and that's not to have anything against Ocon. Like, Ocon's a good driver, but Ocon's not a top 5 driver in F1, so you can't really say that Alonso is if he's not. Like, if the gap between him and Ocon was the same as what you've seen Max and Perez at some weekends, then you could maybe argue that, but even...
It has been, to be fair. At Canada, he was qualifying a second and a half quicker than Ocon. That's serious stuff.
But then you can say the same about Lance Stroll on, like, the odd weekend and Vettel, I guess, when it's been wet and he's just dominated.
Maybe, but I would say Alonso's pretty comfortably outperformed Ocon this year. And the reliability has sort of made Ocon look a little bit better than he is.
Yeah.
But I'm slightly partial to Alonso, so...
No, that's fair enough. What do you think?
I don't think top 3. I think you could make an argument for top 5.
Yeah.
I think 5th probably is where I'd probably go Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, probably Lando Norris.
Yeah.
And then I would probably say Alonso in 5th place. I think the reliability has obviously been a huge factor in him not being as far ahead and probably challenging Norris for that 7th place in the driver's title. But no, I think I'd be very tempted to find out if, like, again, in this fantasy universe that we can live in, if they put Alonso back in a top 3 team, do I think he would still perform at a top level? Absolutely, yes. Would they do it? Obviously, maybe not, because he's now 41. But I think that I would personally say top 5.
No, you can definitely make an argument there. But we can definitely... Well, speaking of reliability, we definitely know that Alonso has definitely burned his bridge with Alpine after that whole statement he made about after retiring. Was it Mexico he retired? He did
retire in Mexico.
Yeah, so like he retired in Mexico. I think that's when he made the comment. So I think it's fairly good to say that he has officially burned that bridge completely with Alpine. Very mind, I know he is going to Aston Martin next year, but yeah, you got to feel sorry for his reliability issues he's had this year. But
I'd be interested to see how he does with Aston Martin, because if they keep their development up, they've gone from being the 9th best car in the grid, realistically, to now at some races they are the 4th best team. If they keep going and they establish themselves as the 4th best team with potential to even challenge for podiums at some point, it will be very interesting to see whether he can do that. And obviously Alonso and Stroll could be a very, like, realistically quite a good partnership. And like we say, with age you start to maybe decline a little bit. He's now 41, and he's still performing at this very high level. He could very easily go until he's 42, 43, 44. I mean, there's nothing stopping him, and I think it will be very interesting next year with Aston Martin to see how he does.
Yeah, I think definitely it'll definitely be interesting to see how it goes. I mean, as a quick one, what was your rating? What's your rating for that then? For that controversial opinion, or so-called?
I think C. I think you can argue it, is the way I'm thinking. I think an argument could be made using certain things that you could say Alonso is probably the 3rd best driver right now. Verstappen's far and away number 1, obviously. I think either you could argue Leclerc, and potentially Hamilton is creeping back up to being the 2nd best on the grid. But you could definitely make the argument that Alonso's 3rd, so I'd say C.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any differences with that?
Yeah, I agree. A C.
C.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, so we'll give that one a C. It's not great, but it's not bad either. So I think we'll do one more before we take another break. I will do this one. Vettel does the most for the sport in terms of raising awareness and inclusion for the sport. Do you agree with that?
He does or he doesn't?
He's the best. He does the most.
Oh, okay.
So that's more than
anyone else.
Yeah, I don't think you can question that. I think you look at any kind of race they go to, he's off doing other things with other people, trying to have as much inclusivity as possible, get anyone and everyone involved in the sport, and he's gone out of his way to make sure that planes are using better fuel for the environment with like flyovers and stuff.
Yeah.
Litter picking, like you would never see other drivers do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really argue against it. I think the only thing that possibly maybe would be an argument against it is that he hasn't had the more widespread profile that some other drivers have. Obviously Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton have a much bigger platform to sort of, if they wanted to, and maybe with Hamilton a bit more than probably Verstappen, push certain messages forward. But I think overall you can't really look past Vettel as being by far the most inclusive, and it's the fact, I mean, he does it sort of, he just does it. He doesn't really care about the hype. What was it, in Britain, I think he went to go pick litter off the stands in, it was either Belgium or Austria. It was like that hive or sanctuary or thing or whatever. He just sort of does it, and then people realise a few days later. It's not, I mean, it's interesting how much he wants to use social media, and I think the fact he's now set up his own Instagram, I think will be a good thing if he wants to push on and do that. Quick sidetrack. Sebastian Vettel's Instagram is how everyone should use Instagram. It is just childhood photos. It's brilliant and I love it. But when he does retire, obviously, if he doesn't decide to come back, I think he will start pushing the messages through that Instagram, and I think he could become a big advocate in the future, even bigger than what he already is now.
Yeah, because obviously now he's only just got Instagram, and I'm always going to dislike the fact that the first thing he ever posted on Instagram was his retirement. That's, as a big Vettel fan, I'm always going to not like that. But I think, the fact that he's obviously not other than the last couple of months, he didn't have social media at all, and the fact that he managed to post all these awareness as well and use the most of the stuff he can to actually spread it, but he didn't like order people to do it. He basically he showed an example, if that makes sense, which is what I think was what makes it even better. So I don't think that was a controversial opinion at all. So, but I think it was a good opinion. So I think I would give it a D, mainly because I think he's right.
Wholesome Vettel opinion.
Yeah. So
D, E, something like that.
So I think what we'll do now, we'll take another quick break, and then afterwards we'll dive into some of the bigger controversial opinions. I think we just started off a bit slow, and then I think let's go to some of the big ones. Maybe brings back some PTSD from last year for some people in this room. So I think I think, let's get into some of the bigger opinions, and we'll start with quite a few of the Max ones first. So, I'm gonna get this one out of the way because I hate talking about Twitter so much, because it's that Verstappen fan base is the most toxic of the fan bases, and they're always abusive online to Lewis Hamilton. I'm going to put my foot in right there and say no, Team LH is the most abusive fan base of them all. I have nothing against, I mean, I would say there were two kinds of Lewis Hamilton fans. There were genuine Lewis Hamilton fans. Yes, we do have one in this room as well. And then you got the so-called Hamilton fans on Twitter who literally think everything, whenever Lewis Hamilton doesn't have a bad weekend, is literally anyone but his fault. Even when Lewis says himself that's his own fault, that is his own fault. I mean, this is coming as a Red Bull fan. But, yeah.
Yes. The only caveat I would say is that none of us speak Dutch.
Yeah.
So we don't know what goes on.
Yeah.
Like, we would imagine that there is a thing called Dutch Twitter. And then there's also a thing called Dutch F1 Twitter.
Yeah.
And we don't, because obviously algorithms and all that jazz.
Disclaimer, we do know that there is a very toxic section of the Max Verstappen fans, aka the Orange Army of Austria, who did unspeakable things that I don't want to talk about at Austria this year. So those sort of people I do not count as Max fans. So, yeah.
I think that in the in English Twitter that's tweeted in English and so on and so forth, yes, you are right, but I do think that they're, just because we don't see it, because it's obviously in Dutch and it's not fed to us because like algorithms and stuff on Twitter, I don't think we have maybe the full picture.
No,
I think Max and Lewis favourite, or like Max and Lewis stands are definitely the worst. I think that's just because they're the most popular, most publicised. But I think that possibly they are equal in terms of how bad they are.
No, definitely, I'll agree with that.
I don't think, from our perspective, that the Red Bull fans are the worst. I think you have Max Verstappen fans, which I'm sure a small group of them are not very pleasant, and we know they're not.
Yeah.
But I think Team LH have potentially, this could be another controversial opinion, Team LH could have ruined Hamilton's perception and kind of legacy. Like, people will look back and will have more anger and frustration towards him due to those fans on Twitter. That obviously there are people who are Lewis Hamilton fans who are like, just love the sport and just like following him, but there are those that are just aggressive and anti anything that isn't pro Merc and Lewis.
Yeah. I mean, you get this in every sport, you get this with every team as well. You get the fan, there's always going to be that small minority that think that team is literally the best team in the world and nothing can go wrong for them. You get football, cricket, F1, wherever, that you will get that small section of that supports their own personal team that think they're literally God Almighty. So, but yeah, I mean, what do you think, Yusuf?
Yeah, I think if you look at like the Dutch Grand Prix this year, I mean, that shows how great it can be when a group of people that support a driver come out in support of that driver. But ultimately, I'm impartial as a fan, and they're all about as toxic as each other to me.
Yeah.
I mean, can I go back to the ruining the legacy thing?
Yeah.
I don't, obviously, you've got to remember, Twitter's quite a small caveat of F1 fans. I don't think if you're talking to 30-year-old Bob from Wisconsin who's got into Twitter through got into F1 through Drive to Survive, I don't think that he's necessarily going to have a negative perception of Lewis Hamilton. I think every time you talk about Twitter and stuff, you've got to remember it's such a small subset of the F1 fan base, and just we're on it because we're all quite passionate and we want to find out other people's opinions, and we're also young, so social media age and things like that, and we sort of play into it. But I think just remembering it's not maybe representative of the whole wider world. Twitter's a cesspool. The world's very slightly better.
Yeah.
No, I think I understand. I obviously understand that, but I don't think it's done anything good for his legacy.
Yeah. Oh no, definitely not. It's it can only do bad things, but I don't think it's done that
no,
much.
It's not tarnished it really. But
I just don't like a lot of people who just spend their lives on Twitter, because they just had the worst opinions known to humankind a lot of the time.
Definitely not on Twitter right now.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's I have a strong opinion from my side, so But yeah, I mean, what would you give that one as a grade?
B. It's quite controversial. Yeah. I think it again can be true, but I don't necessarily think it's totally true, and I think there's a lot of context that maybe needs to be applied to the opinion before we can judge whether it is true or not.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Do you have any objections?
Yeah, it's just not, I don't think it's particularly accurate again, so I can't give it an A. But yeah, about a B seems fair.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I just agree. I think it's a B.
Yeah. Okay, and then let's go on to the slightly bigger Verstappen opinion we have. That Verstappen deserved 2021.
You say this is controversial.
But some people really hate that.
I think he did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think he did as well. But obviously some people would think differently, that Hamilton deserved it more than Max.
I think his performances that year were by some distance the best on the grid, including Lewis Hamilton, who performed with exceptional peaks like Brazil and until he met Alonso in Hungary was unbelievable in that race, but made plenty of mistakes like Imola and Azerbaijan, which Max didn't, and Max was just phenomenal all year, with the perhaps exception of the Q3 lap in Saudi Arabia, which to me still stands as one of the finest 27 corners in F1 history.
Yes, but it was 28 because the lap was 28.
I understand.
Sorry, this is one I'm going to bring up later because it's obsessed me a lot.
I adore that lap.
We'll move on for now. Do I think Verstappen deserved it? I think whoever won that title that year deserved it. I think that while Hamilton made mistakes, I would argue that his peaks were greater than Max Verstappen's. Brazil, regardless of what car you're in, coming back from, obviously there was a sprint race, but coming through the grid without any difficulties, any crashes. To be honest, catching Max Verstappen about half distance of the race. Obviously, that Verstappen-Hamilton incident at the race was a big one, but getting past him the second time, I think, a lot easier. I think that race was one of the best performances of his career. Hungary, I think, obviously Hungary, before he met Alonso, as he said, one of the, again, a very good performance, and realistically, you gave him 3 more laps, he would have won that race, in my opinion. Qatar, I think another one that's overlooked, but by how sort of dominant he was, even over Max Verstappen.
I mean, yeah, I'm going to interrupt there. You look at Qatar is probably the best example of just how good those two drivers were last year, because I think Verstappen was like 20 seconds ahead of everybody else, and then Lewis Hamilton was another 20 seconds ahead of that. So you can actually argue that how big of a peak that was in Qatar itself, that dominance.
Personally, I think Hamilton's lows obviously definitely 100% a lot lower. Imola, obviously a mistake that he was able to make up for. Azerbaijan, a mistake that he wasn't, and you can say it with any incident that happened throughout that year with how close it was, but that ended up costing him the title. But I think, and Verstappen was at a consistently high level and did have some obviously exceptionally unlucky moments, but again, that is sort of how it works out in F1. So I think that whoever won that title did deserve it, and with Verstappen winning it in the end, while I'm obviously not a fan of how he won it, it wasn't his fault in how it was played out. It was the FIA's fault, and Verstappen winning the title, as much as I didn't like it and was annoyed and wasn't very happy with it, it's not wrong to say that he did deserve the title last year.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be very controversial, by far and away deserved it. I think if you look at the luck from my perspective that the two drivers had, one of them was a lot luckier in circumstances than others. So you look at Qatar, you said there was a big gap, but that originated from a very unfortunate grid penalty that was quite tenuous at the time. You look at Britain, where Lewis was at fault for the crash and still was able to win the race, which personally I don't think is great that's able to happen, and I think that the penalty probably could have been harsher than a 10-second penalty when you look at some of the 10-second penalties we've had this year for some of the crashes.
Baku and Hungary as well.
Yeah. I mean, Baku where he was arguably miles away the best driver that day and was undone by a tyre blowout. Hungary.
No, I don't think so. He was, to be honest, in Baku. Hamilton.
No,
Because he was
The car that...
Verstappen.
what was...
I talking about Verstappen.
Yeah,
Verstappen.
Baku.
Yes, yeah, Verstappen was definitely better.
He was miles ahead and
yeah.
just was unfortunate. And then Hungary, his competitor's teammate took him out, and it kind of all added up over the season. And then, whereas you look at Lewis, benefited from obviously the max penalty in Qatar, and the weekend when he got disqualified from.
I think Hamilton still on pole.
Yeah, he was, but I think the fact that if you'd had Verstappen next to you, it's going to be a lot closer that whole race. You're not going to have to wait 4 or 5 laps before he's into second. So you've got that fight off the line.
I still think Qatar would have finished.
Yeah,
1-2, so maybe
Qatar's less of a luck, but I think you look at Brazil, like the race he got disqualified was also a sprint race. So like, if it's a full race, yeah, he might still win it, but I don't think it's as dominant as it seemed.
Yeah, and not to mention that engine. That engine in Brazil, because they always turn the engine up.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a strategy.
It is a strategy, but
it's not.
They had to take the penalty. They still had to take the penalty for the swapping the engine. So.
And the other one you could say he got very lucky on is Russia. If Norris had decided to pit, that's 7 points Hamilton loses there.
But then, if the rain doesn't come, Verstappen finishes 7th, and that's more points lost than Hamilton. And Hamilton was close. I feel like Hamilton was closing on Norris. I think, personally, I do think Hamilton would have got Norris.
I think when you go down to Sochi, you're just getting into sort of racing details.
Yeah.
But I think you can look at sort of Baku and Hungary at the very, in Silverstone, like you said, at the very least, as times when Max was very, very unlucky.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair, and I still think I stand by my statement in that if either driver had won it, I would have felt that they deserved it.
For sure.
Yeah. I think one final thing as well is Bahrain. If you look at the track limits, the amount of times Hamilton went over and had no punishment, and Verstappen had no chance. He went over like once in the whole race.
We should have known the FIA would ruin something at the start of the season.
It was sandwiched. It was like the whole season was sandwiched.
I'd call that an A opinion. I'd say
that's definitely an A opinion.
Pretty controversial,
but
pretty accurate as well.
Yeah. Because both drivers deserved it. I don't think the only driver really actually deserved it more than the other. Because, like I said, we compared the two drivers. Both had highs, both had lows. He had lucky at other places. I do feel Hamilton was a bit more lucky in Verstappen, because I think obviously you talk about Baku and whatnot as well.
I don't think Hamilton was more lucky. I just think Verstappen was more. I guess it's maybe mood, but I think Verstappen was more unlucky than Hamilton was lucky.
That's definitely you can definitely
Abu Dhabi and
Well, like I said, regression to the mean, everything comes into the middle.
Yeah. But no, I don't think you can win a world title without deserving it.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's possible. I think if you're up there with after 20 races, you've clearly done something right.
Yeah, I can't think of any.
Yeah, and I think we'll do, and then
maybe
I think
Nelson Piquet in '87.
Well,
that's harsh.
Yeah.
The way I remember the world titles of the 1980s is, if I can't remember who won that year, it was probably Nelson Piquet.
Yeah. And he won 83, 87. He won 3 races to Mansell's 7, but just kept finishing second and retired less.
Consistency.
Yeah.
No, he retired less. He had the number 1 car. Back then that made a big difference.
Yeah. Well. I think...
Good opinion from whoever said that.
That was good.
It was a good opinion.
That's an A.
I think let's move on to the other side of the equation with Lewis Hamilton, and I'll start with the less controversial opinion. I'll say definitely less. Lewis is the undisputed greatest of all time.
No,
he's not. He has as strong a case as anybody else. I think. I think 3 people to me, maybe 4 or 5, stand above as people that have the strongest case, and then about 10 people altogether have a case. So, for example, Fernando Alonso to me has a case to be the greatest of all time, but not the strongest case. Yeah. But Lewis Hamilton has a very strong case. Ayrton Senna has a very strong case. Michael Schumacher has a very strong case. Perhaps Fangio and Jim Clark as well.
I have 5 at the moment. I've got Fangio, Clark. Actually 6. I've got 6. Fangio, Clark, Senna, Prost, Schumacher, Hamilton are in my
opinion, Prost as well.
Yeah, I mean, Prost was never had like the standout performance that he was so consistent. I think at some point, he was I think he's about 7 points away from being a 7-time world champion if everything else plays out.
Don't forget, he does have the fourth. Is it the third? I think the third highest amount of wins of any driver.
Yeah.
Because I think fourth. Sorry, because obviously you got Lewis Hamilton.
It's after Vettel. Hamilton, Schumacher, Vettel on 53.
Yeah, because then 51, and then I think it's Senna after that.
Senna
as far as I'm aware, yeah. But I think that if you take those 6, interchange them in any order from 1 to 6, I probably wouldn't disagree with it. I think those 6 are the greatest drivers because it has to be by era. F1 in the 1950s is so different from now.
Yeah, you can't have a single greatest driver of all time. No. Because, yes, Lewis Hamilton has 100 wins, but don't forget, we have so many more races nowadays compared to 1950. So
Fangio didn't race in more than 50 races. I think he raced in 52, actually.
And obviously, you could point to Fangio's win percentage, but he was racing against drivers that realistically weren't professional. If you even put Latifi back in, he's still a professional racing driver who is incredibly quick. He would outperform a lot of people. See, maybe the technology is different as well, and that's a whole other thing, but
he would also have to finish the race for that.
Yeah. Oh god. Oh well, no he wouldn't. But no, I think you can't have the majority, this is a majority F1 opinion, that you can't have an undisputed GOAT.
Yeah.
I hope most people think that.
I think it's much more fun to do it in terms of characteristics. So, for example, dragging a car that's damaged or something, or a car with poor balance to places where it doesn't belong is, to me, Fernando Alonso is the best I've ever seen at that, and you could argue perhaps the best ever. Lewis Hamilton has certain characteristics to me which are
I think his tyre management. Tyre management is God's here.
Both the rears and the fronts. Especially in his early career, how creative his overtaking was unbelievable to me. And also just pure one-lap pace. And the wet, perhaps, as well. So I'd say those characteristics, I'd say that's more fun to do than just say, well, Hamilton is undisputedly better than Schumacher, which is just a bit boring to me.
Yeah, so, I mean, pretty controversial, but obviously wrong opinion.
Wrong.
Yeah, I'll give it a D. So, get a 10.
I feel like these ratings are incredibly arbitrary.
they are quite arbitrary, but I thought, there's a rating matter. Nobody's good.
But we're in charge, so
what are you going to do? This is not a democracy. But, I think that, I hear what you mean. And,
should we do one more?
Yeah, we'll do one more. The other one is Lewis should have retired last year.
Oh my god.
No.
Which I don't think is the case.
I think Lewis, if he'd won it, would have retired last year? Potentially.
Yeah.
Because he'd won 800 odd wins, doesn't really need to do much more.
I give him enormous credit for continuing.
Yeah. So because after last year, if you want to quit at that point, it's probably the low point of his career.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is amazing to say after 13 years in the sport, your low point can come then, but he'd done nothing wrong up until that point in the race, and to be fair, he did nothing wrong at any point during that race. The authorities conspired against him.
Yeah.
Still a brilliant driver, and we're still lucky to have him on the grid. So
I think he'll win his 8th.
I think he'll get
E or F. He does have a chance.
Opinion to me.
No,
that's an interesting one.
Cool. Yeah. But we can cover it after the break because there's another opinion sort of based on that.
Oh, yeah.
So we got loads more to go through still. So I think, actually I want to we'll start with something that we were talking over the break, because I think it's a pretty good thing to talk about actually. That, Jeddah would be a much better, much more highly rated circuit if it wasn't in Jeddah.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeddah is a brilliant F1 track. It's the best it's replaced Monaco as the best qualifying of the season by an absolute mile. It is terrifying to watch.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing because they've sort of built a track you'd build in the 90s but for the 2020s. I had no idea how this thing got approved, but the fact it did is incredible, and as long as Mick Schumacher doesn't drive around it ever, we'll all be fine.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think if it was in Monaco, people would be like obsessed with it. Like, people would go there and just to drive their own cars around it, like they do with the current Monaco track anyway. But it's just such a spectacle, the race itself, and like qualifying is just such high speeds the whole way around the circuit. It's almost like, I don't know if this is going to sound right, but it's like an oval track as a street circuit. Like, you're just constantly at high speeds.
Yeah.
And you're always so close to one snap of oversteer and you're in a wall.
Yeah. I mean, possibly the prime example was last year in Saudi, when we had the qualifying attempt by Verstappen where he almost got pole position.
Yes. Now it's time for me to wrap. That lap is not good. It's not a lap. You can't call it a qualifying lap because he didn't finish said qualifying lap.
There are moments in that lap that just knock me out, though. It's just...
He went wide in that first corner, but he was still half a second lap, but he still ended up being half a second ahead going into the third sector.
But where did he qualify? He finished third because he didn't finish the lap. It's a wonderful first 27 corners. Arguably the best we've ever seen. But the track has 28 corners, and he slid out the final one, clunked his rear suspension, broke it. It's like congratulating Felipe Massa for winning the 2008 world title, but he didn't because there was an extra driver. Glock was on the track, and Hamilton overtook him and won it.
Okay, I'm going to save Will from his rant. There's traditionally in F1 3 tracks which a driver can make more difference than usual, and they're Monaco, Spa, and Suzuka. And Jeddah, what's great about it is the high-speed corners and the danger and the barriers right there. It's not quite like those 3 tracks for me where a driver can still make a huge difference. A driver can, like a Max Verstappen or a Leclerc is beautiful in high-speed corners. But it's not quite, to me, on the level of those 3 pure tracks, but maybe that's just me being a nerd.
The only thing I'm not unhappy about that Max Verstappen lap, or not lap last year, Max Verstappen almost lap last year, is that what Christian Horner said before it about how sector 1 and 2 were the ones where the driver would make the difference and sector 3 was just about the straight line. He was correct in the first half of his statement, but unfortunately the straight line outdid his driver. At least the final corner did. And it's a very good almost lap, but it's not you can't compare it. You can't say it's one of the best qualifying laps of all time.
I still do.
It didn't finish.
Yeah, that's okay with me.
We'll break the deadlock.
It's not a lap.
Okay, this is the question. Is Max Verstappen's qualifying attempt in Jeddah in 2021 one of the best qualifying laps of all time?
No.
Thank you.
It wasn't a lap.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, best attempts of all time, but not lap. So, strictly speaking, it wasn't a lap. He didn't finish the lap. He did crash the car and damage and break the rear axle at the end. So, yeah. I mean, it's definitely become one of the most unexpectedly good tracks that we've ended up having in the last few years. To
be fair, I will give myself credit here because I said before we went there that track looks good, and I don't understand why people are criticising it, and I was right.
I think it's more the location than the actual track.
Yeah, it is the location. Just move it away from missile strikes, and then we'll be fine.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I think I want to slip in another opinion here about tracks, since we did compare Jeddah to another track. I don't think that Monaco should really be staying on the calendar for much longer anymore. I think it should be removed at some point if we don't change that track at all. I really think it should.
I completely disagree.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, same.
No,
Monaco has been terrible for decades now.
Yeah.
I was watching Monaco 92 like last week, which is a very famous one, and Mansell is probably about 3 seconds a lap in clean air quicker than Senna, and he spends about 5 laps behind him, and the checkered flag comes out and he's right behind Senna and he can't overtake, and that's just what Monaco is, and it's what it's always been.
I just feel like, especially with, I'm talking from why I think so. Obviously, we know that the cars are just not built for, Monaco's just not built for the cars anymore, because the cars are just too big, too wide, too heavy. So you can't, and obviously overtaking is a big issue. But then, especially with now massive popularity of the sport, Monaco doesn't really bring in as much money as it used to anymore, compared to other circuits. And I feel, you don't have as big as a crowd capacity. The infrastructure's just not there, and Monaco's just not gonna be able to support it.
I just still feel as if there's magic at Monaco. Like Michael Schumacher's lost pole, Charles Leclerc's lap this year where he was, I think, 0.7 seconds clear of the field by Tabac, which is only turn 12. There's still about a third of the track left. I still think there's too much magic there for us to get rid of it. I think I can handle it once a year.
Yeah, I think as well, like, if you're going to get rid of that one, then you should also get rid of Zandvoort.
Yeah.
But the reason Zandvoort's there is because of Verstappen, so why can't you keep Monaco because of Leclerc? Leclerc's also got, Ferrari as a whole have got a massive following, and a lot of their fans love Leclerc, such as myself, and like, it'd be harsh on him. Now he's kind of got that championship winning card, not to suddenly have his home race taken away before he can even finish on a podium there.
But will he even finish a race there is the big question.
No, but he still gets the chance to every year.
Like, will he ever win that race?
Yeah, I think he will. I don't think that if Pirelli had built a competent wet tyre this year, the race at Monaco this year, I think, would have been very good.
Yeah,
I think
it's pretty good anyway.
Yeah, and I think it wasn't the best in the world, but I don't think
as soon as the race restarted, it was.
I think there's still the tension there of if a driver makes a mistake, you are going straight into war. I think you've sort of combined Monaco with increasing driver professionalism in terms of just they're better than they used to be. Just generally, drivers are better, so they're crashing less into the walls. Latifi notwithstanding, but I just think I can deal with Monaco once a year. I think maybe making it slightly special, maybe doing like old school liveries or something like that. Maybe making it slightly different, just so it does hold a bit more of the special nature, making it like not a historic race with like old cars, but making like historic liveries and things like that, or just something different.
Yeah, so like, they could just keep like the thing that made it remotely interesting this year was strategy. Like Ferrari somehow again managed to mess it up.
What do you mean somehow? It's Ferrari.
But they find a way, even when it looks like they shouldn't find a way, to mess it up. And that made it interesting. So maybe Pirelli can just bring the softest tyres they have, make them pit 5 times in the race. Or maybe say that you have to use all 3 tyre compounds in the race and add a bit more of a dynamic strategy. So, okay, we want to use softs at the start to get the better launch or something like that. Just change it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's just something needs to be changed, because the current format I don't think is very sustainable for Monaco itself. So I think there definitely just needs to be some changes, either to somehow they can change the track layout somehow to maybe aid it, and all for maybe like extra pit stops with strategy tension. But I definitely see why it should stay as well. But at the moment it's not sustainable. So let's move back onto some of the society's opinions. That Mercedes will not win any championship for the rest of the decade.
Wrong. Though to be fair, I probably would have said that was wrong in 2010 about Ferrari, and then they didn't, so maybe. I just think it's Mercedes. They're such a juggernaut. I know we said at the start of the year about how Mercedes would win a race, and to be honest, they still might in Brazil.
I doubt it, but
it's raining. Anything can happen, but it's Mercedes. They're good, and the new regs are designed to push the field together. I just think surely it's Mercedes. They've still got Lewis Hamilton for at least a few more years, I think, because I don't think he's not doing much outside of F1. So
I don't see them doing it before the new regs come in. Because I think that they're a year behind, effectively, on developing their car. Ferrari and Red Bull have had data all year, from their current cars. Mercedes have literally come out and said, I think, that they're having to redesign half the car anyway. And they're like they have no data on what they're designing.
Yeah.
I think ultimately there's no real reason that you can use as a platform to make the claim that Mercedes won't win for the rest of the decade. Maybe they won't, but we've got no grounds to say that now.
And not to mention the 2026 regulations are looking to be quite massive as well, because they're removing the MGUK, so obviously the whole electrical, so practically half the powertrain is going to be completely overhauled. You got potential changes to making the cars much smaller as well, so practically the whole car is going to be overhauled in 2026.
I'm trying to remember the last team that did really well after a change in engine regulations.
It was Mercedes.
Yeah. No, I think they might not. I don't think anyone was. I mean, let's say you asked this question in 10 years ago now. It's 2012. Vettel's just won his third title against Fernando Alonso. Would you honestly say that you don't think Ferrari are going to win for the rest of the decade? Realistically, no, you wouldn't. You would say Ferrari could win. By all accounts, they probably could have won in 2017 and 2018. Red Bull obviously won another title a year later. Mercedes then went on and won, obviously, everything else for the rest of the decade. I think it's hard to say what could happen, but I think you can say Mercedes won't do it, but I don't think, personally, I agree.
It's a tricky one. I think, like you said, there's no way we can kind of say, yes, they will or they won't. There's nothing to kind of back it up. The other thing that's interesting as well is you've got a massive big company like Audi coming into the sport that can spend the next 4 years or however many it is before the regs come in looking at these regs saying, okay, this is what we want to do, and work with I think it's Sauber they're partnering with, saying, okay, we've got this ready to go, have your car ready, and they could be a powerhouse from the start. Like, we don't know that yet.
Yeah.
The VW group, they have got a lot of money.
Yeah, of course they do. But then, there's not been, in recent history, we haven't had a good,
new team.
New manufacturers haven't had a really good time. I mean, of course, Honda as well. BMW didn't exactly have a stellar time either.
Jaguar, BAR, the list.
You look at Mercedes. They came back to the sport. It took them 3 years.
It took them 2 years.
Pretty decent though.
They took them 2 and a bit years to win a race. 3 and a bit years to start challenging. But Hamilton, up until they changed all the tyres in 2013, and obviously Red Bull went on a mad one. Yeah. Hamilton and Rosberg weren't not. It wasn't looking likely, but they weren't not in that title.
They're in the title fight.
Yeah,
maybe not favourites.
The other thing as well, completely unrelated, I guess, but if Porsche also come in, and you have Audi and Porsche competing, obviously they're both part of the VW group. Are they like sister teams? Is one team more important than the other? Which one do they put more money into?
I think now Porsche won't come in.
No.
And as far as I'm aware, they actually they don't get along that well as brands, despite being part of the VW group.
Someone's just squabbling siblings.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it makes sense for the VW group because Porsche are now in WEC, and the 963 is obviously the new hypercar class is having a lot of interest in who wants to enter it. I'm so looking forward to it. Got Ferrari confirmed, BMW, Cadillac Acura, Porsche obviously, Lamborghini, Vanwall, Glickenhaus, Alpine. These are, and then even more that could come in. I'm so looking forward to that.
Le Mans this year is going to be mental.
Le Mans next year is going to be even more mental.
Yeah. Well, that's like the next.
Yeah.
Next one.
I want to go to Le Mans 24.
Why not? That is definitely looking to be really good anyway.
To be fair, that does bring us on to a sort of similar one about different series.
One that is completely
the one
false.
we all disagree with. So it's Formula E is more competitive, entertaining, and a better series than Formula 1. No.
There's a reason it's not on Sky.
Yeah. No, it's just not as good as Formula 1.
Street circuits. If they put that on normal circuits, I'd be way more interested in watching it. But street circuits.
It's just not as fun to watch because the thing is, F1 is considered to be the pinnacle of motorsport, at the top of among the top technological sports. And you look at those cars and how technically advanced they are, and then it looks spectacular. Whereas I think, especially for me, this is my personal opinion, that Formula E, the cars just look like they have absolutely no grip at all. It's just literally, they're just sliding all the time. And also, I just don't like the sound of the cars.
Formula E is genuinely pushed, I would say, Formula 1 away from more electrical enhancement. F1 is now looking towards biofuels as the new option. There's been rumours even of hydrogen-powered combustion engines in the works. Obviously, we've had hydrogen fuel cells for a while now, and I'll be very interested to see how hydrogen works as a fuel source for Formula 1 cars. I am of the opinion that at some point we will go back to a V8 engine, or even a V10, but with sustainable fuels, with something that is maybe a hydrogen fuel cell, something like that, but we will go back to a V8 or a V10.
Yeah, no, that will be really, really good for all us fans to have. I see all old F1. The V8s are so cool. They're so loud. No, yeah, I miss the sound of that V8 and blown diffuser.
Yeah, that crackle when it's braking.
It was such a good sound, that crackling, but. And the backfiring, it was so satisfying to hear, but obviously time to change, all about, obviously you need to care about sustainability, the environment. So.
The grid format of Formula E as well is confusing and bad.
Fan vote. Why is fan vote a thing?
It's the pinnacle of electric racing. Yeah. It's like, you've got to do that. You can't be doing that. You've got to be doing it properly.
Yeah.
It's not just that, like, the races are relatively short.
Like, because the cars can't last.
Well, exactly. So you get less racing, and also to get like the speed boost or whatever it's called for like 3 minutes, you have to sacrifice positions. Like, I guess it generates overtaking, but it's just the overtake you've probably already seen before.
It's too gimmicky.
Yeah, it's like I'd rather they said, we'll put it down the middle of the main straight to help you catch up to the cars in front of you.
If you want to watch quality electric car racing, watch Extreme E, because that's cool.
Yeah, that's actually cool. That's actually cool. Event.
It's like Forza Horizon, but in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think, Yusuf?
I prefer F1.
Yeah.
You are wrong, whoever. We're not even going to rate it. You're just wrong. Opinions can't be wrong, but you are. You've managed to find the only wrong opinion in the world.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. That was about it. About that. So I think let's go back into F1 and let's go into a little bit of F1 history. The Senna quote about no longer going for a gap, and the quote was, if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver.
Don't say the swear.
I'm not saying this way. Is complete rubbish.
Yes. I think it is.
I think he's right to an extent.
Hang on, give it. You said you had the context for the.
Sure, I'll fill you in on this. So this is after Suzuka '89. Him and Prost are both in the McLarens together, which is the dominant car of that season. Not quite as dominant as the season before, but still by far the most dominant car. And they're basically, if they both get out of the race, Prost wins. And if not, Senna wins. And it's towards the end of the race, and we're coming up towards the chicane after the 130R at Suzuka, right towards the end of the lap, and he just goes for a gap that blatantly isn't there, and gets criticised for it afterwards. Both cars are out in the end. Senna gets a push start and is therefore disqualified, and Prost is just out of the race. And afterwards he's criticised by the media, but his defence is this famous sort of philosophical, very Senna-esque quote. So that's the context behind it.
I don't agree. I mean, I think you've got to pick your moments. I think Verstappen probably subscribes to the philosophy a little too violently for my taste. But
no, but yeah, I mean, I agree to an extent.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't just go for any old gap. No. You can't just... but then you have got the opposite. If you go for a gap, if you no longer go for a gap that
you should go through.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to think of it as well. If you go for a gap that no longer exists, you're a Maldonado.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's also not quite right as a racing driver. Although, who am I to tell Ayrton Senna how to race a car? But if you look at, let's go back again to Monaco '92 when Mansell's right behind Senna. He's sort of all over him, and he's just trying to almost show how much he's trying to get past, rather than try to get a really clean exit, to Mirabeau or somehow try to go around the outside of Rascasse or something like that. He's almost just too all over the place looking for a gap. And if you look at, for example, Schumacher overtaking a Lacey at Nürburgring in '95, it was really incisive. So it took a few laps behind him, really incisive, overtake first time. So there's an art to it beyond just there's a gap, go.
Yeah, you got to be methodical as well.
I'm thinking back to Hamilton in Brazil. Obviously, he goes for it the first time. Verstappen forgets there's a corner, and we end up halfway into Argentina at that point. But he doesn't go for it the lap later. He gives it a few laps to rework, and that. I watched the video that F1 just put out recently of that weekend from Hamilton's perspective. He starts the overtake at turn 1 just by sort of offering up that lunge, makes Verstappen go defensive, round the S's, he's all out of position. He doesn't go for it at any point. He waits. Then he goes down to turn 4, much better run, is able to get that overtake done. I think saying if you don't go for a gap is too simplistic in realistically how racing. I understand why he said it, obviously.
And he obviously did say it to defend.
Yeah.
The principle is correct, but obviously you can't just go for the gap.
Go for all the gaps.
Yeah.
No, I think I'm not criticising the quote because I think it sums up quite well the mentality of race drivers.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying it's necessarily accurate all of the time.
If you no longer have that aggression to be able to go for that corner, I think then you're no longer that sort of racing driver.
Yeah, there's truth to it.
Because you could argue Hamilton followed the philosophy quite well in Silverstone, and that didn't end up well.
Yeah. I think it'd be better to say if you're no longer looking for a gap.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure you're looking for that overtaking opportunity. If you're just content with sitting behind someone...
Yeah. So basically what we've done is we've rewritten one of the most famous quotes in F1 history because we think it's wrong.
Yeah. But this is the controversial opinions episode, so, you've got to be a little bit controversial at some places, I assume. But, I think, before we go through our last few, we got controversial, we'll take one more break. I think, do you want to go over any more of the opinions?
There are a few ones that are just objectively wrong, and I would like to point them out to embarrass anyone that ever thought these. Gasly is in the top 3 drivers in the grid. Wrong. Given the right car, Ocon can win a World Drivers' Championship. Wrong.
No, I think no.
I don't.
There's a slight chance, but I don't
Ocon's not a number 1 driver.
No.
He's a number 2 driver, and the number 1 driver in that car would win that title.
Yeah.
There are drivers on the grid that are better than Esteban Ocon. There are enough of them that at least one of them would beat him to the world title.
Yeah.
Any others that are just objectively wrong? F1 is dead and just cars going around in circles. Wrong.
We are an F1 show, so...
Yeah, we have to say that's wrong. Latifi gets so much hate for being awful, but forgot how bad Mazepin was. Yeah, that's wrong. No one's forgotten how bad Mazepin was.
We just don't want to remember him.
And we come to the conclusion? Latifi deserved to be in F1, but wasn't good enough. Mazepin just never deserved to be in F1.
Yeah. Because, Latifi was actually second in the championship.
Second in F2, yeah. Mazepin, I think.
He won F2. Latifi won F2.
No, Nick De Vries won that year.
Yeah. Oh, De Vries is that.
Can't wait for that next year.
Well, at least it's finally got an F1 seat. Finally show what it's capable of in F1.
Right, we'll go through some of our final ones just to finish off.
I think that's.
You never got to say your one.
And
it's quite an interesting one.
I think Robert Kubica was I mean, I'm not necessarily definitely, but I think was probably the best driver of his generation. And by that, I'm including sort of Sebastian Vettel, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, and Kimi Raikkonen's a little bit earlier, but so we'll exclude him, but I would say he has a strong case as well.
I think it's hard to say, obviously, because if he hadn't had his accident, do I think he could have won a world title? Obviously, I'm thinking about it also in terms of how everything panned out in the end. I think he would be close. He would be maybe in the better role in 17 and 18, and I think potentially he could have won it.
Well, I think that if he didn't have his accident, I think he had a Ferrari contract signed.
He was Ferrari bound 2011. As far as I'm aware,
2012, but
was
I'm
it 2012?
I'm not sure of the
It
details.
was around that time, but he would have been Ferrari.
Look, here's my case for it. In 2008, he was, in my opinion, the best driver on the grid, ahead of Lewis, Massa and Raikkonen. Certainly more consistent than any of them, and in a BMW that was the third quickest car on the grid. And only finished 21 points, I think, behind Hamilton, all in all.
Oh yeah, what was it? BMW stopped developing the car while he was leading the World Championship.
Yeah, he was leading the World Championship after 10 races in Canada, which he won. His only ever win, and they stopped developing the car because they wanted to focus on the 2009 car that was a disaster. In 2010 with Renault, he qualified. In my opinion, there's three sort of tracks where the driver can have more influence than usual in terms of putting a lap together, and they're Monaco, because of all the slow speed corners with getting your front axle turned, Spa and Suzuka. And he qualified second in Monaco, third in Suzuka, and third in Spa, in a car that is basically the equivalent of a Haas this year, the 7th or 8th quickest car on the grid. And that Suzuka lap, I stand by as perhaps the best qualifying lap I've ever seen. His turn in towards just the very first corner, the double apex, was stunning to me. So yeah, that's my case for Robert Kubica perhaps being. Also, Fernando Alonso said he was probably the best one of the lot, and Lewis said he was the one he feared the most, and he was quicker than Lewis in karting. So there is a genuine case here.
No, I do think it's a very much case. I think he'll go down as, again, probably a what if in terms of
definitely one of the biggest what if.
I think the greatest what if in F1 history is.
I think maybe Jim Clark's up there.
Jim
as
Clark's
well.
still won
Or
two
maybe
World Championships.
But how many more? I guess he could have won. That man did like 60 races in a year, won about 45 of them.
Yeah.
In every formula.
I guess we still got to see Jim Clark at his swashbuckling best. Well, not we, as in me, but some people did. Whereas we never quite got that with Robert.
No, I think that's fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, Jim Clark, he was in Formula 1, British Formula 2, French Formula 2, IndyCar. Oh, he raced in the Indy 500.
Went to Australia, won there. God, I loved it.
And then he
Jim
did
Clark's
touring car as well
good.
with the Lotus Cortina. That was one year, 1965, possibly the year as dominant year.
And 1963 with the beautiful Lotus 25.
Yeah.
Oh, that car's so nice.
I think the Lotus 25 was used in 1965.
They used it at the start.
They used it
as well. Yeah.
They used a updated version of it. So, yeah, it is a big one. I mean, do you want to go next, or should I go next? Okay, I think my one, it's not really controversial, but I want India back on the grid, the international circuit. I feel like it's one of the better Tilke tracks we've had.
I think India and Korea were victims of Sebastian Vettel's success.
Yeah. I think India were also, I'm going to go slightly political with corruption.
No, I don't actually think India, as far as I can remember, was never really a bad circuit. It's just Vettel was really good there.
Yeah, I mean, he won his fourth title in India in 2013. I remember. I think they've still got the time marks when he did his donuts. They've still kept the time marks there so far.
So maybe we don't go back, just so we can preserve that.
Just take up that bit of track.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then it's just sitting there. I just want India back, because especially the motorsport in India is starting to grow quite a bit now. So
no, I could get behind that.
So it's not really a controversial one, but maybe the add to that China should just be let go.
China, I think we just need to let China go.
Because when are we ever going to get back? When are they? Because because I know, yes, we kind of gone a little bit political, but yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that race will go ahead next season.
Yeah.
I just miss like the 2013 calendar in general. Just some of the tracks that we went to.
Yeah. No, I only want to remember 2013 for the second half of the season. My guy winning 9 races in a row.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, what is yours? Well,
if I've changed mine, if Nico Hülkenberg was on the grid for 2020 or 2021, he would have got a podium.
For who? Who's he driving for?
He's driving for anyone that's better than Williams. Anyone, and maybe with the exception of Aston Martin last year. But if he's in the Racing Point in 2020, 100 million % gets a podium.
Yeah, for sure.
Without a shadow of a doubt, and I would go as far to say in the right circumstances he would win a race that season.
Was just a statistic. Like, if you have almost 1,000 drivers have driven in F1, he's just a statistical freak. That's all Nico Hülkenberg is. Like Chris Amon or something. He had 5 poles, led 7 races, never won one. It's just statistical freak. It just happens.
yeah.
Nico Hülkenberg, if you think Nico Hülkenberg was a very, very good driver.
Yeah.
He just never got A, the front running car to show it, B, the luck, and when he did have the luck, he did have a quite unfortunate habit of choking.
Yeah, but
at
for
quite unfortunate
like
moments.
you say, for a guy to get a pole and to be leading a couple of races, I think, and certainly in the podium places fairly frequently, it's just a statistical freak for him to not end up with one.
Yeah. Every time I watch a race back and see Hülkenberg in the podium positions, I'm like, I know it's not going to happen. I'm like, please, just stop the race now.
Yeah.
2019 Germany.
That was the one that came to mind.
2012 Brazil. Just don't crash into Hamilton.
Yeah.
An underrated one where he could have got a podium. 2017 Baku. He clonked the inside corner as they're going in towards the castle section.
What place was he?
I think he was like 5th at that point, but I think he was 5th with the Vettel and Hamilton, who both needed to pit for reasons. It could have been
he was,
different.
One of the drivers
reasons.
that Ricciardo went down the inside for that iconic triple overtake, right? So he was right up there.
Another one quickly. That overtake's one of the best overtakes of all time.
I love it so much.
It's you guys like,
so good.
Like, regardless of the fact it's a long, very long straight, he's overtaken 3 cars into one corner.
I've never seen it elsewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah. That was.
This sort of one of the reasons I just want Nico Hülkenberg back on the calendars to just, if Haas somehow make a god tier car next year, by some miracle, it gives Hülkenberg another chance.
No, I only want Nico Hülkenberg to see what the driver chemistry would be like with Magnussen.
I
can't say what he said on air.
I've got a theory. They're going to be best friends. I reckon they're going to love each other.
They're going to really annoy Gunther Steiner for the whole year.
Just a prank call with Steiner would be so good, and that'll be the reason I watch Try to Survive season 6. But it's definitely it'll be interesting to see who does get a Hassie. It'll be fairly interesting. And
one final one for Will.
Bahrain is currently the best track on the calendar, in my opinion.
What do you mean by best track?
It provides the best races.
Consistently, if you compare with the last few years, it is the one that's consistently highest percentage of good races.
I'd say Britain is Silverstone's the only one that I would compare it to. If in 3 years, if Jeddah's had 5 track races out of 5, then I'd probably put that up there as well. But
I think,
so far,
I'll edge Silverstone.
I think I'd just about edge Silverstone.
Mainly because
just about.
Because I think Silverstone just has a slightly better spectacle.
I think it's more of an atmosphere.
I think as an event, as an atmosphere, Silverstone is better. But in terms of the on-track racing, I think it's really aided by the fact that it is the first race of the year. So, there's not one team usually in recent years that streaks ahead of the others.
Yeah.
And everyone's kind of optimistic, and everyone's kind of, what's new this year?
Yeah,
which is why I would say Silverstone might be slightly better, just because it still manages to be good even quite a way into the season.
I prefer Spa and Suzuka personally, but they don't.
Suzuka, yes.
Suzuka, yes. Spa
They don't
has not.
necessarily produce the best racing, but as pure racing tracks for a driver.
Yeah, in that case, yeah.
I would argue Spa is sustaining itself increasingly more on the vibes as opposed to good races.
Yeah. So
Monza's actually produced good races. Spa is increasingly shifting into the Monaco camp.
I'm gonna pitch in a little bit of my opinion. Monza is only good because of the results, not the racing.
Yeah, there's a little bit of overtaking.
Because you can't overtake at Monza.
Yeah.
You actually can't because it's just DRS trains.
Yeah.
Because DRS is useless.
Do you want to chuck that DRS one in very quickly?
Yeah, we should replace DRS with push to pass like they have in IndyCar.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I don't even know what push to pass is.
So you get so it's like DRS. You get more power. I guess DRS is aerodynamics, but you get more straight line speed. But you get, I think it's 90 seconds per race, something.
It depends on the race.
It's X amount of time per race. Sure. It's essentially like Kurt. Do you remember back in the day we had Kurz?
Yeah.
It's like race-long Kurz, but you can use it for X amount of time for the entire race.
We still have the ERS system a little bit.
Yeah, but the difference is the ERS system regenerates almost every lap, whereas you might get some people. So say you had someone like Verstappen starting 18th, he could use all of his, or like 90% of his push to pass to get through the entire field, and then have his position a lot quicker than, and you can use it anywhere in the lap as well. So it's.
I would say DRS and push to pass. That should make it gimmicks.
I think that might actually ruin it.
Either add push to pass and get rid of DRS, or you can use DRS anywhere on the track. But only once. The
day I see someone use DRS through 130 hours, the day I cry.
You used to be able to use it anywhere in qualifying anyway.
I think they should bring that back. Actually, I think DRS anywhere is a bit too dangerous for me.
Obviously not corners, but there should be more areas where you can use it. But you can use it in, say, one area per lap.
I think push to pass anywhere on the track should come back.
Like a good idea.
Push to pass would actually be a better idea, I think.
Yeah.
Because you can actually use the power.
Just so it's just increased ERS.
Yeah.
Or just add a battery. I guess it makes the cars heavier, so that's not ideal. But
I guess the thing is...
Isn't that pretty much bringing back higher engine modes?
Yes. Bring back, you get party mode. We'll call it party mode.
Bring back party mode.
They should bring that.
It's just called Hammer Time Fluid.
Every driver has their own special push to pass name.
The issue is though, is because the thing with IndyCar is it's like two engine manufacturers. By having push to pass, if you gave Ferrari push to pass, they probably have the same engine power as a normal Red Bull one.
Yeah.
So it kind of helps, but
it's still strategic in where you use it.
I suppose.
If someone's used all of theirs up.
Yeah.
Do you try and, I don't know, go back to Bahrain, you get them on the front straight, do you try and use push to pass to overtake on the next straight, or is the person that's just overtaken you also using push to pass?
Yeah.
It's not just DRS where they're definitely going to use it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it. We haven't really got time for more, so I think
that's been very good. I think we could genuinely do another episode on that. There's more opinions that need to be discussed.
No, I think this is definitely a fun episode, so I think, thanks for obviously everyone coming on, Yusuf, Will, and Will.
Yeah.
Get older.
And we'll be back next week to talk about Brazil Grand Prix. Please, for the love of God, don't red flag the thing.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping...
Can I change my 1 point prediction, please? To take away the rain and add 5+ red flags throughout the weekend.
Yeah, why not? Why not? I'll actually allow that, to be honest. So,
okay. Well, you've allowed it. We're doing that.
So, yeah. I think, So, thank you for coming on. And, So, this is me, Chinmay, signing out. And thank you for listening to the Warwick F1 show.